Hey everyone, Charlie here. I hope you're all doing well. Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to the first of the new style One Cup of Japan. Today we're going to be talking about money, specifically saving money in Japan. And to start out, I want to give you a little bit of an anecdote. So maybe about a year ago, a friend of mine, former friend of mine, decided that it turned out to be the case that they had to move from their apartment into a new place very suddenly. And when that came about, it was kind of a very serious situation because this person did not have any sort of savings. Now, if you want to know why that's such a big deal, the costs of moving, I think, in Japan are far more prohibitive than they are, than they were when I was living in the States, for example. And to give you a rundown of that, anecdotally, when I moved out of my last apartment into the place where I'm living now, the three big costs that I have were the following. I spent about $2,500 down payment just to get this place secured. That included the security money, the sort of thank you money, which is one of those you get back, one of them you won't, and then first month's rent. So that was, of course, a very big investment, $2,500. And then we spent another $1,000 on getting things for the apartment, things like a washing machine and a stove and all that kind of thing for the apartment. And then lastly, I spent another $1,000 on just like odds and ends, getting things set up, like money I had to pay initially for insurance for the apartment, the yearly insurance, which isn't that much money. It's only about $125 for the year or something like that, but that and other things just sort of added up. And all this to say that it's a really big investment if you want to move here. So that's why this friend was in such a bad situation, right? Was because they didn't save any money. And thinking about this, one of the things that I had heard before moving to Japan and over and over again after moving here was that how much better Japanese people are at saving their money from month to month than people from places like the US and Australia and places that aren't Japan, basically. And I began to wonder, how true that is, and if that is true, first of all, how big is the disparity between Japan and other places. Today we're going to be talking about America because I'm American and I'm too lazy to research a ton of other places, to be honest. I want to talk about maybe some of the reasons or lack of reasons for why people aren't saving money like they should. So the first thing I want to talk about is that I did go to Twitter once I had the idea for this video / podcast. It's also going to be a podcast version, which to the people who are listening to this in its podcast form, I apologize if I make any references in such a way as to say like, oh, look at this thing, or please look at this graphic or whatever. It's going to take me a little bit to get used to, not treating this entirely like a video form kind of thing. So I'll do my best, but if I do make mistakes like that, please bear with me. I'm going to do my best. So to dive into it, like I said, there is this thing that's often talked about, which is Japanese people being really, really good at saving. And from what I understand, this kind of trend is changing. Maybe people aren't saving as much as they used to, but to talk a little bit about the numbers, and forgive me as I look down at my references here. Actually, excuse me, I skipped over something. First, we need to talk about the Twitter poll that I ran, which was asking other foreign people living in Japan how much money they're putting away each month. And the options that I gave for that were either A, nothing, B, under 1,000 yen, about $100 US, between 1,000 and 5,000 yen, which is between 100 and about $500 US for the sake of simplicity. And then the last option was 5,000 yen or more than $500 basically. 14% of you said you save nothing. 14% say you save under $100. 45% was actually surprising to me, save between $100 and $500 a month, and 28% also very surprising to me to save between save over $500, over 5,000 yen each month. Now, anecdotally speaking, again, in my experience, pretty much every other foreigner I know living in Japan, unless they're married or they're in some kind of long-term relationship, they don't really save any money. Most other foreigners I know spend a lot of money on goods, or like going to things like, property themed cafes, like Pokemon cafes, that kind of thing, or just going out drinking or that kind of thing. Not judging that lifestyle, I'm just saying that that tends to be the case in my experience. So I was really pleasantly surprised to see that people are putting away at least a little bit of money for the most part, particularly that 28% that say they're putting away more than $500. So to jump into the truth of this idea that Japanese people are really good at saving, right? If you think about sort of some of the cultural peculiarities, so to say, that make Japan different from someplace like the U.S., for example. Right, while it is more common now, certainly in the States, for you to live with your parents, especially after you've graduated college and you're trying to get on your feet or whatever. I myself lived with my parents for a year and a half, I think, after, well, anyway, some shit happened, and anyway, I moved back home for a little while in between jobs before I moved to Japan. But here, it's very, very common. My fiance, for example, lives with her parents, lives with her whole, what would be considered the nuclear family here. And, because of that, of course, there are less expenses for her that she has to pay, no rent, that kind of thing. And that's common enough, for younger people, unmarried people, although apparently it is becoming more common to go out and branch off and start your own thing, particularly if you're going to move to Tokyo instead of staying in Inaka, for example. But as for the hard numbers, right? And one thing, of course, you have to consider with savings is average income. Now, average income in Japan is about $40,000 US. Here in Fukui, for example, it is much lower than that. The average income in Fukui is actually about $2,000 US. There's a lot of factors that go in that. That's not really within the scope of the video, but that is the case, and something maybe we'll talk about a little bit later. 15% of working adults have no savings, which sounds high, but you're going to find out later that in comparison to other places, it's actually quite low. 80% of people do have savings, and the average household savings is $94,000 US, which is really, really shocking to me. Now, if you're thinking those numbers don't add up, there is another 5% that, about 5% who have not reported, or did not report how much, whether they save and how much they save to this poll. And by the way, if you want to see any of this data, some of which will be in Japanese, it will be in the description on YouTube, and once the webpage gets set up for the podcast / everything that is connected to stuff that I'm making, there will be a show notes page as well. But as for now, the links to the sources will be in the description down below. So clearly, right, the majority of Japanese people have some kind of savings, and again, the average household has quite a significant amount of savings, at about $94,000 US, as I said. Kind of a little bit of a side topic, what's been said recently is that even with that amount of savings, after people retire, it's probably not going to be enough according to the government. So if you think like, okay, well, hearing that number, I'll aim for 94,000 too, aim higher maybe. I need to aim higher myself. So now if we think about this in context, right, if we think about this in relation to, ouch, that was my elbow. Now again, I am from the States, so if I think about this in comparison to where I'm from in my own sort of cultural background, right? In my adult working life in the States, when I was working as a writer, I can tell you that I had no income. Maybe at the end, I had income. That's not what I want to say. I had no savings. Maybe at the end of the month I had like $40 or something left in my account. But for the most part, at that time, maybe I was making about like, I don't know, $1,500 to $1,800 a month. Not, not too amazing of an income really, but it was enough. And, at the end of the month, I was like I said, maybe I had 40 bucks left in my account if I was lucky. Otherwise, I was living very much paycheck to paycheck. A lot of that was because of the lifestyle decisions I made. I like to go out and have really expensive craft beer and, you know, high-end food and all that kind of thing, right? Surprise, I'm a pretentious asshole and I spend money on things I shouldn't. But again, anecdotally speaking, the friends that I had at the time, much more so than the Japanese friends I have here, you know, they also didn't really have any money, you know. And even if they found themselves in a position where they knew maybe they shouldn't be going out drinking, if you ask somebody to go out for a drink and they have like, you know, 20 bucks left in their account and they think, okay, well, it's a week till my next paycheck, somehow I'll make it work, you know, that's a pretty common thing, I think. But if we go from the anecdotal to the actual numbers, right? And again, I'm just going to be talking about the US today, but if you know more about the specifics in your own country, for example, and you want to talk about savings and all that jazz, in your own country, for example, please tell me about it in the comments down below. So as for the US, how it compares to Japan, the average income in the US is $47,000, approximately, right? Which is, of course, higher than the average here in Japan. But what is shocking is that 42% of people from the ages of 18 to 29, let's say that again, the coffee here is already hitting me very quickly because I ran and decided to make this video, so the coffee's hitting my bloodstream really quickly. 42% of people ages 18 to 29 have $0 in savings. 26% of people from 30 to 44 have $0 in savings. Of the households in the States that do have savings, the average is only $8,900, right, which is under a tenth of what the average Japanese household saves. And it's not as though, you know, people in Japan have more to worry about, or that American people have less to worry about when retirement comes around, when old age comes around. It's just, for whatever reason, and it's not, the reasons aren't really too much in the scope of the video, I guess. But for whatever reason, just American people are not saving as much, right? It's definitely a cultural thing, certainly. But as for the why of it, I don't know. What do you guys think? Let me know down in the comments below. Especially if you are from the States, why do you think we are not very good at saving money? If it's the same, you know, if you're from the UK, if it's the same thing, for example, please tell me about that in the comments, as well as the reasons for why you think that's the case. Now, I think maybe because of the cultural background, that's why it makes it a little bit more difficult for foreign people to put away money, right? Like if we look again at the statistics that we got just from the Twitter poll, now this is from a small small serving size of foreigners, right? Small sample size of foreigners, only about 30 votes. 28%, within the 28% of people, half said that they either save nothing, and then half said that they save nothing, while the other half said that they save under about $100 a month, right? And I have to imagine it is because of the cultural background, right? And also, I know, for example, when I first moved here, and I think it's maybe something I talked about before, was that when I moved here, right, I just went nuts. It was suddenly I had access to all these things that I had wanted easy access to when I lived in the States, right? Like stupid shit that you don't need, like gachapon and like, you know, 50 manga that maybe you aren't actually going to read, or whatever the case may be, right? Like I had a period where I was buying Vocaloid CDs, even though the concept of Vocaloids is freaking terrifying to me. Thanks, Dad, for making me watch Terminator as a child. But yeah, so I mean, I understand like that kind of thing happens. And other things where people just want to travel constantly while they're here, or, you know, they get into like a party lifestyle, or they continue their party lifestyle that they had back home after they got here, that kind of thing. So, you know, that kind of thing happens. But I don't want to, at the same time, paint the picture that it's impossible to save money here, right? Because clearly it's not, with 45% of people saving from $100 to $500 for, you know, of the people who responded to the poll. I myself fit into that number. I save about $400 a month here, and that's on a salary of about 31 month. About $3,100 a month between my full-time Kaiwa job and some other things that I do on the side, which I don't want to talk about in the video because they're not bad. It's just for reasons, So, you know, one of the questions that I have gotten before from you guys out there in the community is it possible to save a good amount of money when you come here, particularly if you are coming here to work? And if we just look at the averages, right, I think the average salary for a full-time Kaiwa teacher, for example, is about $2,500 a month. And in my case, I can only talk about in my case, I make a little bit more than that from the Kaiwa gig. But after, for example, my pension is taken out and taxes and stuff like that are taken out, I have a take-home pay of about $200,000. $200,000. That would be great. $2,000 a month. And then from that, right, I pay rent, I pay gas, water, electric, and then I have, you know, just normal life stuff like buying food and all that jazz. But to sort of go beyond the anecdotal a little bit, the average rent in Japan across the country is about $500. Like I said, that's average rent for all prefectures. In Tokyo, of course, it's a lot higher. I think it's just under $800 a month is the average in Tokyo. In other places, I think the rent can go as low as about $350 a month if you're in a place that's not Tokyo, basically. As far as food, the average across age groups is about $550 a month. And utilities, that's including all three of the utilities, water, gas, electric, is about $100 a month. So you're talking about just under $1,200 a month on average of, you know, necessary expenses, you know, the absolute necessities. Now, for example, if you want to get internet, it's not included in your rent, for example. So about $100. No, that's not true. That's not true at all. I pay about $100 a month for both my cell phone and my internet service. So that is added to that. And then, of course, if you have other things like a gym payment or whatever, then of course maybe you're gonna be knocking down how much you can actually save per month. But like I said, in my case, I have the take home of $2,000 a month. And if I subtract only the things that I really need to pay for, which are my utilities, my food, and my rent, then I'll wind up with about $800 of expendable income per month. So obviously there is some area there where you can actually save some money. So it is not impossible for sure. I don't know why. First of all, I don't know why now actually hearing myself sort of reason this out to you into the camera, why I'm not saving more than what I'm saving now each month. Probably something I need to look at for myself. But yeah, let me know down in the comments below how much you're putting away each month, where you're living, why you're able to save that amount, why you're not able to save more, as much as you feel comfortable talking about, of course. Otherwise, for the podcast listeners, you can of course get at me on Twitter, which my new Twitter handle is C Hayward Jr. Because, well, that's my name. And before we end the video there, guys, I do want to let you know that there is going to be another Twitter poll. I want to kind of do as much community involvement in these videos as possible. And the next poll, which I'm going to put up just after posting this video, is asking the question, has getting the JLPT N2 or higher affected your life in some kind of substantial way, right? Because next time the topic of the video is going to be talking about how to basically empower yourself to put yourself in a better position while you're living here, working here, doing whatever here. Right? So that's where we're going to end it here. Let me know if you like this kind of topic, if you found it to be too dry because it's, you know, it's a lot of numbers, it's talking about money, that kind of thing. Do you like more research-based videos like this? Do you want to see more of us just going out and walking around and shooting the shit like we used to in the old style videos, which those will be coming back once I have the hardware to do so. But yeah, let me know what you'd like to see improved, what you think I could have done better, what you think I did well, because this is going to be kind of a experimental process for the next few videos, I imagine. So that's being said, thanks very much for watching. I look forward to hearing from you guys on the comments and on Twitter. Podcast listeners, sorry again about the lack of dedicated microphone, I'm working on it. But otherwise, guys, I will see you all next time, and take care of yourselves. Cheers.